Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take a stack of your sources, really plunge in, and pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge. Today, we're diving into your material, focusing on something, well, incredibly practical, tackling some of those English vocabulary mix-ups. You know, the ones that can cause headaches for learners and actually even native speakers sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. It really is fascinating, isn't it? You think you know a word, but then a similar one trips you up, or maybe the context just changes everything. And the transcript you shared, the one detailing common vocabulary mistakes, it gives us a fantastic roadmap, really, to explore some of these tricky pairs and phrases. It definitely highlights just how much nuance there is.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is basically to work through the list you've provided. We want to clearly unpack the distinctions, using the examples right there in your material as our guide. The goal, well, it's to help you feel more confident using these words and, sidestep those potentially awkward moments. And your material makes a really good point right up front that learning language, it's a process, right? Mistakes are part of it. And the best way is just gradual practice. So we're going to lean into that today. Okay, let's dive right in then. The first pair from your list, cushion versus pillow. I mean, on the surface, they seem pretty similar, don't they? But the distinction here is quite specific.
Absolutely, yeah. Looking at the definitions in your material, a cushion is typically something you'd use on sofas or chairs. It's mainly for comfort or, decoration. Think of it as something that adds a bit of softness or visual appeal to furniture.
Okay.
A pillow, though, that's much more specific. It's really designed for resting your head, especially when you're sleeping.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. So like your example puts it, I bought some new cushions for my sofa, but I need a soft pillow for a good night's sleep. You wouldn't really swap those, would you? You wouldn't sleep on a sofa cushion, ideally.
Exactly. Probably not comfortably. The material makes it clear the context is key furniture versus sleeping support.
Okay. Moving on down your list, another common one, look versus watch. I have to admit, I feel like I mix these up sometimes myself.
Oh, many people do. It's a common one. The distinction here, as outlined in your sources, it's really about duration and intent. So look is generally defined as directing your eyes towards something briefly, like a quick glance. The example given is, look at that beautiful bird. Just a quick moment.
Right.
Watch. However, that implies looking for a longer time, often to observe something happening, something dynamic, like, I'm going to watch a movie tonight.
Ah, I see. So you might look at a photo, maybe because it's static, it's just there. But you watch a TV show because it unfolds over time. It moves.
Precisely.
One is a moment, the other is sustained attention.
Exactly. It's that difference between a kind of passive observation and a more active, prolonged engagement. Your material points this out with that comparison. Quickly see something, look versus observe over time, watch.
Okay, clear.
Yeah.
Now, here's one that I think trips people up because the words look so similar. But wow, they mean wildly different things. Hard versus hardly.
Yes. This is a great example of how just adding "ly" can completely change the meaning. Your material explains that hard can be an adjective, right? Describing a firm surface, like, this table is very hard. Or it can be an adverb meaning with a lot of effort, like, she works hard at her job.
Okay.
But hardly, well, that's a different beast entirely. It means almost not at all, or barely. So if you say, I hardly eat breakfast, it means you eat very little or maybe nothing.
Right. And your material even includes that classic, that joke, are you working hard or hardly working? Which just perfectly illustrates how hardly basically negates the effort implied by hard as an adverb. It's clever how English does that.
It really is. Understanding that hardly is an adverb that modifies the verb, meaning with great difficulty or often almost not, is crucial. And your material lays that out very clearly.
Okay, next up, grow up versus bring up. This feels like one where the subject of the verb is the real key.
You've absolutely hit on it. That's the core difference. Your material clarifies that grow up is something that happens to a person. It's that natural process of becoming an adult. The example is, I grew up in a small town. The person does the growing up. Bring up, however, that describes what parents or guardians do. They are the ones performing the action of raising children. So the example given is, my parents brought me up to be kind.
Okay, so the child grows up naturally, but the parents actively bring up the child. That's a really important distinction. And yeah, your material specifically warns against saying something like, I grow up my children. That sounds wrong.
Right, exactly. The action of growing up is inherent to the individual who's maturing, whereas bringing up is the action performed by the caregiver on the child.
Got it. Okay, how about breathe versus breath? Just one little E at the end, but it changes everything, including the sound.
It really does. And your material highlights the difference perfectly. Breathe with the E, that's the verb. It's the action of inhaling and exhaling air. Like in the example, I need to breathe fresh air.
Right, the action.
And breath, that's the noun. It refers to the air itself that's taken in or released. Like, take a deep breath and relax.
Okay, so one is the action you do, breathe, and the other is the thing, the breath that you're moving. And your material gives that great little tip about the E at the end of breathe.
Yeah, corresponding to that voiced, the sound E, while breath has the unvoiced sound. It makes it a bit easier to remember which is which. Linking the spelling and pronunciation to the word's function like that is a clever mnemonic from your sources.
Definitely helpful. Okay, good versus well. Oh, this one is so common. I think everyone struggles with this initially.
It's a classic, absolutely. And your material provides a very clear rule, which is helpful. Basically, good is an adjective. It describes a noun. The example is, this is a good book. Book is the noun, good describes it.
Simple enough.
Well, on the other hand, is typically an adverb. It describes how an action is performed or how something is done. So the example, she plays football well. How does she play? She plays well.
Okay, and your material addresses that really common question, how are you?
Oh.
You can say, I'm good, which is interesting because you're describing your state of being, almost like an adjective here. Or you can say, I'm well, specifically meaning you're healthy, which is also kind of adverbial, describing how you are.
Exactly. That's a slight exception or a specific usage.
But then if someone asks, how did you do on the test? You'd say, I did well, because you're describing the action, the doing of the test.
Precisely. That how are you example from your material is particularly useful because it shows that well can function as an adjective, but specifically when talking about health. That's an exception people often get confused about. But for most other cases, that core rule holds. Good describes a noun, well, describes a verb or action.
Right, okay. Next, hear versus listen. This one feels like it's all about whether you intend to process the sound, maybe.
That's precisely the key distinction your material makes, intentionality.
Yeah.
Hear is generally passive. It's the physical ability to perceive sound, and it often happens whether you want it to or not. Like, did you hear that noise? Maybe a car backfiring outside? You just heard it.
Yeah, it just happens.
Listen, however, is active and intentional. You are making a conscious effort to pay attention to sounds or maybe understand them. The example, I'm listening to music right now. You chose to put the music on and pay attention.
So you might accidentally hear a loud bang from the street, but you choose to listen to a lecture because you want the information.
Exactly. It's the difference between sound just entering your ears versus your brain actively processing that sound with some purpose.
Makes sense. Okay, this next one from your material. It includes an anecdote that I found pretty amusing. Factory versus fabric.
Ah, yes, the story about the dress. Your sources definitely highlight this as causing some funny misunderstandings, and, well, I can see why. Fabric is defined as the material, the cloth used to make things, especially clothes. This shirt is made of cotton fabric.
Right, the stuff it's made of.
Whereas a factory is a physical building. It's a place where things are manufactured or assembled. My father works in a car factory.
Right. And that anecdote your material mentions about the student saying, I like your dress, it has a beautiful factory. Oh my goodness, it just perfectly illustrates how confusing these can be. It paints a very different picture.
It really does. That specific example from your material is such a powerful, memorable way to show the potential for mix-ups, complementing the place of manufacture instead of the actual material of the dress. Big difference.
Huge difference. Okay, how about say versus tell? Both are about speaking, obviously, but your material gives a neat rule for when to use which.
Yeah, it provides a very practical guideline. You typically use tell when you mention the person who is receiving the information, the listener. It usually needs what we call a direct object, the person being told. Examples from your source are, tell me a story, or she told me a secret. See the me.
Okay, yeah, there's someone receiving it.
Exactly. You use say when you don't specify who the listener is or if the statement is more general. Examples, he said he was tired, or she said hello. You don't know who they said it to, it doesn't matter.
So tell almost always needs a who after it, tell who. Whereas say can often stand alone or be followed by that and a clause, like he said that he was tired. And your material notes that getting this right makes your English sound much more natural.
It really does. It's a key distinction for natural flow, and focusing on whether the listener is mentioned or not, that's a good rule of thumb provided by your sources.
Okay, fun versus funny. Another pair that sounds alike but points to pretty different feelings or qualities.
Indeed. According to your material, fun describes something enjoyable or pleasant, like the party was fun, you had a good time.
Right, enjoyment.
Funny describes something that makes you laugh, something humorous, like that joke was funny. Haha, funny.
And your source uses that great example of a roller coaster. It's usually fun because you enjoy the ride, the thrill.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Oh.
But it's not typically funny because it doesn't usually make you laugh out loud like a comedian would. So it distinguishes that overall feeling of enjoyment from the specific quality of being humorous.
Correct. Fun relates to pleasure or enjoyment. Funny relates specifically to causing laughter.
Got it. Scary versus scared is up next. This feels like cause and effect here, maybe.
Exactly. That's a great way to think about it. Your material defines scary as describing something that causes fear. For example, that was a scary movie. The movie is the thing causing the fear.
Okay, the movie is scary.
And scared describes the feeling you experience as a result. I was scared during the movie. That's your emotion.
So the scary thing makes you feel scared. The source neatly connects the characteristic of the thing, scary, to the resulting emotion, scared.
Precisely. One is the attribute of the stimulus, the thing causing the feeling, and the other is the emotional response itself.
Simple when you put it like that.
Yep.
Okay, our final pair from your main list is borrow versus lend. Your material correctly notes this is a common source of confusion, not just in English, but in many languages.
It really is, because it all depends on your perspective, which direction the item is going. Your sources explain that borrow means to take something from someone else just for a short period. You are the one receiving it. The example is, can I borrow your pen? You want to receive the pen.
Okay, I take it.
Lend, on the other hand, means to give something to someone else temporarily. You are the one giving it. The example, I will lend you my book. You are giving the book.
Okay, so I borrow from you and you lend to me. The direction of the item moving temporarily is the crucial part, as your material makes clear with that simple summary sentence they included.
Exactly right. Focusing on who is receiving and who is giving in that temporary exchange, that's the key insight your sources provide for telling these apart.
Okay, great. Your material also included a few other useful phrases defined right at the end. Let's just quickly look at those. First up was on purpose.
Right. This phrase, as defined in your sources, means doing something intentionally, deliberately, not by accident. You fully meant to do it. The examples clearly show this. He broke the window on purpose. Means he wanted to break it, it wasn't an accident. And she spilled the juice on purpose to make me angry. Means the spilling was a deliberate act with a specific, not very nice goal.
Okay, so it basically means deliberately or intentionally. Got it. How about on the other hand?
Your material explains this is used when you're introducing a different or maybe a contrasting idea. It's often used to compare two different things, or maybe two different aspects of the same thing. The examples given were comparing the good points of summer versus winter, or comparing the exciting side of city living with the noisy side.
Yeah, it's a really useful phrase for making that switch, transitioning to an opposing view or aspect. Very common. Next, in a nutshell. I like this one.
It's a great idiom. According to your sources, it means to say something in a very short, concise, simple way. You're focusing only on the most essential information, boiling it down. The examples were summarizing a successful project outcome on time and under budget, or giving the main reason for disliking a movie too slow. Just the core point.
Right, like giving the summary in a tiny container. A great way to summarize complex info quickly. And barely, we saw hardly earlier, is barely pretty similar.
Yes, they're quite close in meaning. Your sources define barely as meaning almost not or only just. It implies something happened, but by a very, very narrow margin, or it was very close to not happening at all. The examples illustrate this well. I barely passed the test means the score was just high enough, maybe 1 point over, and she could barely hear the music. Means it was incredibly quiet, almost inaudible.
Okay, so it's about achieving something, but just scraping by or something existing at a really minimal level. Makes sense. Finally, your material gives two distinct meanings for the phrasal verb take in.
Yes, it lists two important and quite different uses. The first is to understand or remember something, usually information. The example, the lesson was fast and I couldn't take it all in, meaning the information was too much or maybe too quick to fully process and remember.
So like absorbing information mentally.
Exactly, absorbing, understanding. The second meaning provided is quite different. It's to offer someone, or sometimes an animal, a place to stay in your home, shelter. The example is, they took in a stray cat. meaning they gave the homeless cat a place to live.
Right, so taking in information or taking in someone or something that needs shelter. Two quite different uses for the exact same phrase, but both clearly explained in your source material. Wow, okay. We have certainly covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, working through your source material. I mean, from furniture and sleep aids to actions and intentions, even the difference between, a material and a whole building. It really shows how many small words or small changes to words can have such distinct uses in English.
It absolutely highlights the incredible richness and, the occasional complexity of English vocabulary. It keeps you on your toes. And as your sources rightly emphasize throughout, the key to mastering these isn't aiming for perfection overnight. It's just not realistic. It's about consistent practice and really paying attention to the context in which you see or hear these words being used. And remembering that making mistakes, getting them mixed up, that's just a normal, expected part of the learning journey.
Definitely. Hopefully this deep dive into your sources has given you, our listeners, some clear insights and some practical tools, things to help you navigate these common mix-ups with maybe a bit more confidence.
And, if we just step back and consider the points raised in your material, think about how these really small differences, like that single E in breathe versus breath, or the subtle context distinguishing look from watch, can completely change the meaning or the impact of what's being said. It sort of raises a thought, doesn't it? In what other areas of communication, or maybe even how we think, might subtle linguistic nuances, things we barely notice, be shaping our understanding in really profound ways? It makes you consider, I suppose, how much precision in language truly influences clarity and ultimately connection between people.
That's definitely something to think about. This has been The Deep Dive.